Welcome back to Car Project Central, everyone. So what we're doing today is we're going to be resolving a bit of a problem with the ECU and where it's mounted. You might have seen our earlier video where we talk about how we fixed our ECU. We think one of the issues is that the ECU actually gets really hot, and I'll show you where it's mounted. It's mounted right here behind the intake. So that's the throttle, that's the airbox, and this is the intake. And the ECU, at the moment it's out of the engine just because I want to show you, and also I'm putting this heat shield in. But basically the back of the engine, that's where the exhaust and the catalytic converters are. So it's going to be getting a lot of heat, and in fact I experienced this myself. When we fixed the ECU, I put the ECU back in, and when I ran the car for a few minutes and then I touched the ECU, it was really hot to the touch. I was still able to touch it, so at least it was under probably about 60 degrees Celsius, but that's still pretty hot for an ECU. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this material that I bought online. It's called embossed aluminium factory heat shield, and it basically just looks like this. I'll open the box up later so you can actually see what it looks like. And we're going to be building a bit of a heat shield to make sure that our ECU doesn't get that hot anymore. According to people online, they say that it's not just because of the heat that the ECUs die on these cars, it's also because of the vibrations. But hey, you know, at least shielding it from a bit of heat, it's not going to hurt, and it's a really simple mod, as I'll show you soon. So yeah, stay tuned and see how we actually turn this into a heat shield for the ECU in our car. Right, so onto the tools that you need for this job. I'm going to be doing this inside because there's a nice desk that I have here, which is my workbench, and all you need is a drill to drill some holes, because the ECU also has some holes, so that's where we'll be mounting the heat shield. Obviously a drill bit set, some metal cutters, tin snips, or just some really sturdy scissors, because the heat shield material is not really that thick. And also you'll need either a bit of paper or a bit of cardboard, and this is just to create a template so that you can actually do this properly. Otherwise you may actually end up screwing up the heat shield cutting. As they say, you know, measure twice, cut once, whatever. So it's quite important to actually have a template and double check everything fits before you put it into the heat shield. Okay, so here's the ECU on a bit of paper. I'm just going to roughly trace out the outline of the ECU like this. It's not going to be a great job. I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you can cut the heat shield to size, that's fine. And also what's important is you get the holes in here as well. So make sure that you put in some holes, and this is what it looks like. So this is going to be the template that we'll be using to cut the heat shield. And similarly you can do it here on the side as well. So what I've done is this is the top of the ECU, and the top is not going to actually have any heat shield material because that's going to allow the hot air to vent from the top. So what I'll do is I'm just going to trace around the bottom of the ECU just like this, just so that I know roughly how big the bottom needs to be. There we go. So it's probably about there, maybe a little bit bigger, because you're going to have cables and wires and everything coming off here. So I'll probably make it just a little bit bigger. I'm just going to double check that's the right size in the engine bay very shortly. And then you also want to just do the other side of the ECU as well. So line it up and then do this side as well, so you know roughly how big you need to cut it. Cool. Great, so I have just cut the template out and it looks like it fits pretty well. I'm probably going to have to make a few tabs down the side here because obviously that's quite big, so I might add a little bit more to the sides. But other than that, it's looking pretty good. I just want to check all the clearances for the cables. I'm going to do that in the engine bay and then just make sure that this template is going to work. Alright, this is what the heat shield material looks like. So it's just standard aluminium sheet with this pattern. I guess this pattern means that it reflects heat a little bit better, and it's a dual layer or multi-layer heat shield. So that means it's got at least 2 layers of aluminium, and it looks like it's pretty good quality. It's quite large, so this is going to be more than big enough for us. I've checked the template on the engine bay. We're only going to be drilling holes on the one side, and then the other side it'll just be free floating using the mounting from the side with the holes. So basically what you do now is just draw the template, transfer it onto the aluminium, and start cutting up the aluminium with your tin snips. Luckily the heat shield material is basically the same size vertically as our template, so that's pretty good. And what I've done is, I don't know if you can see, but I've just traced around the template and then also added these little side flanges as well, just to try and block some of the heat coming in from the side. So that wasn't on the template, but I just added that. And what you should get at the end of that is hopefully something, sorry that you can't really see, but yeah, you can see some fine lines there where I've marked up where the template is meant to be. So just very carefully with the tin snips, cut up your template. Sorry, I should add that you should also have a little bit of an edge around your template as well, just to make sure that you can fold some of the metal in to make an edge. Obviously for the bits that already have an edge, you don't have to do that, but for all these bits on the inside, you should always leave a bit of a room or a bit of spare material to hammer an edge. Alright, so that's all the cutting done. Be very, very careful when you are cutting with tin snips, because there's going to be very, very sharp edges on the side of that metal, so try and keep your hands away from the metal. Obviously don't cut yourself with the tin snips as well, otherwise it's not going to be very good. So I'll just show you what this looks like with the template. So there's the template. Like I said, I've left a bit of an edge around the outside where we need to make a new edge, just to make it non-sharp. And then also what I've done is I've cut into some of these edges here. I don't know if you can see that, but I've cut into here just to give it a bit of a tab, so that we're able to fold it back. Otherwise you won't be able to fold this back as one piece. So now what I'm going to do is mark the holes. You can see those holes there, and start drilling. Okay, so I'm just double checking all of the holes before I do any drilling, because this is actually a really, really important step, because you don't want to get the holes wrong. If you get the holes wrong, then you're pretty much screwed and you have to start again. Getting the cutting wrong is not that bad, because most of the time you can get away with it and you don't need everything to be 100% accurate anyway. But the holes, yeah, definitely need the holes to be right. So what I've done is I've just marked up all these holes really, really well, and I've pre-tapped all the holes as well using a tapping tool. So you can see all of the holes here now, and I'll be doing the drilling. Alright, I've drilled all the holes using my drill, and basically what you do now is you just want to bend the heat shield. So it's really easy, just put it against the edge of a table or the edge of a piece of wood, and then you just want to use your fingers basically to apply some pressure and bend it around. So it's actually really, really simple. It's not a very hard material to work with at all. It's quite easy to work with. And then once you do have that bend, you can use a hammer or even just use your hands and bend it all the way around, and that will make a nice edge for you. Last step of the process for the heat shield is just to hammer everything in. Just make it nice and flat. So you don't have to use a lot of force. You don't have to use a lot of force. Just use a little bit of force and hammer it down, and then that will make a nice flat edge for your heat shield. Alright, test fitting the heat shield. Looks pretty good, so everything fits really well. There's a nice little insulated box there. Hopefully that'll go some way to reducing the temperatures. I guess we'll see soon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some little grommets here as well, just to protect it from the heat conducting into the heat shield, and also to reduce some of the vibrations that are going to the ECU. Once we have that ready, then the ECU will go back in and we'll start the car. Hopefully the temperatures for the ECU will be a lot lower. Okay, so the heat shield looks like it fits. I had to do a little bit of a minor adjustment here where the ground goes into the intake, just to cut out a little bit of material. Otherwise it didn't fit properly around this bolt. So just make sure you do that as well, and then bolt everything up and plug in the ECU. Okay, I've got the heat shield and the ECU back on. Everything's plugged in and it should be all good to go. And basically I'm just going to try and start the car and the temperature should be a lot lower. So thanks for watching. That's how you make an ECU heat shield for your car.